Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Market Talk, and this week we have a special theme. We are discussing the subject of second-hand equipment and the possible impact of that going forwards on the catering equipment industry. Today we have joining us Keith Warren, who is the Chief Executive of the Foodservice Equipment Association, and we have Paul Fieldhouse, who is the Head of Business Development at Surplus Equipment Specialist, Ramco. Thank you very much both for joining us today.
Good morning, Claire. I'd like to say sunny Skegness, where I'm sitting, but morning, Andrew. Morning, Keith.
Morning, Paul. Morning, all. Morning, all. And good
Excellent
to be starting this on a day of optimism with what's happening this weekend, I think.
Yes,
absolutely.
We are approaching the weekend of the big reopening in the UK. Paul, I'd like to start with you. Across the lockdown as it's been, have you seen much more demand for second-hand and surplus equipment? What's been the market trends as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, but very interesting, Claire, because for our March catering equipment sale, it was due to happen the week of lockdown, so we postponed it, and the result in April was actually as good as a normal, depending on the types of lot and assortment of equipment that we had. It was good. So when we then had the June sale with 200 lots, quite similar, but during that period, so if we take April, May, June, the number of bids has increased and the bid values have increased as well. So obviously, 3-4 months in, it's still too early to tell, because there will be much more equipment coming down the line, but yeah, we've been pleasantly pleased.
Okie dokie, and as I say, you often put these out, all the appliances out for sale with in auctions, isn't it? Have they gone up as a lot of the sites have sadly closed across the country?
Well, we take equipment from all sorts of locations. It can be from an OEM, with surplus or obsolete or B grade. From distributors, from operators, from FM sites, anywhere across the UK, and yeah, we do have a pipeline that is filling quite quickly now from across the board. This week I've been in Manchester and Leeds. One's a hotel, one's a big catering operation. And we're now just trying to schedule those in, because we sometimes use a sale from site as well as the dedicated sale that we'll have here from Skegness.
Keith, just to bring you into the conversation, the Foodservice Equipment Association represents around 200 suppliers and manufacturers in the catering equipment industry. What is the perception and opinion of the second-hand marketplace amongst your membership base?
Well, I think it's clear that in a dynamic market such as the hospitality market, there'll be different elements needing different supply routes at different times. I think it's fair to say a new entrant into the market, typically an independent, cash is likely to be tight, and therefore it's likely to be an investment in second-hand equipment. So I think all the elements go together in a complementary manner to make up what is needed for the operator industry. Certainly the case that in representing manufacturers of primarily new equipment on the market, it's important to recognise that innovation in equipment manufacturer is what drives some of that demand from the operator, because they're looking for greater outputs from smaller footprints. They're looking at reducing staffing costs. They're looking at reducing energy costs, and I'm sure we'll come on to that a little bit later. So all of this goes together to make up what the industry needs to function effectively. And what is interesting around all of this, and the sort of work that Ramco and others are doing, really comes off the back of some European legislation which was under the Eco-Design Directive. And whilst we tend to focus on it as being an energy saving issue, an integral part of eco-design was the repairability of equipment, to make it easier for that equipment to be refurbished and repurposed and reused. So all of the different elements go together in a complementary manner, really to give the operator what they need at that particular time.
Okay, you recently published a sort of action plan for the industry, which, you know, as you mentioned, focused on the importance of energy efficient equipment. With the rise of second-hand equipment increases, is that going to have any impact on the sort of the net zero carbon goals that the government had?
Yes, it will do. The changes in the market will do that, and I think we're all aware, having looked at different webinars over the last sort of 2 or 3 months, we see the contraction in the operator chain. There's no question about it, and you know, a 30% downturn, certainly in the commercial market, is evident. That's going to mean there's going to be more second-hand equipment on the market. I think in the public sector, we see cash being tight, and having listened into a couple of the webinars there, over the next year, it's very much going to be hold steady, and there aren't great expectations of investment in new equipment. But that brings challenges as well, because I think it's about the recognition of what new equipment can do in terms of connectivity and energy saving and labour saving, and whether that actually is a bigger level of saving than that warrants the capital investment in the capex. But it's the market forces that are going to drive all of this based on what's needed. And certainly I think from the groups, we'll see them looking to manage their asset in the best way that they can. And that's probably going to be moving equipment around to get the best life out of it. But the overall goal of what we have in the UK and what's been signed up to globally through the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the 17 sustainability goals, to manage the Earth's climate to go no more than 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, that's an immovable goal, which has the potential, unfortunately, to be as catastrophic if we don't address it, as what we're going through in the short term at the moment. And that net zero by 2050 is only going to be achieved by looking at what energy appliances use and what the systems are around that. So that's an immovable force as well, despite the challenges of what we face over the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Okay. I mean, Keith, would any of the older appliances be able to be kind of reconditioned or made more efficient? Would that help in any way?
I think that's more challenging, because reworking a piece of equipment, by the time you've done that, you've challenged what was the original CE marking on the product of the manufacturer when they put that product on the market. And I think really for old and redundant equipment, the best route is to use the repurposing and second-hand routes of development. And if you're really looking for an energy efficient piece of equipment, it's to start from scratch and look at it as the capital investment. And that's very much where our plan came from, the 3-point plan that we have, to try and address that. So let's get some throughput of all of this to try and address that net zero need. And we've asked government to provide a tax credit for a manufacturer when they produce a new piece of equipment that's energy efficient. We've asked for a scrappage scheme, because companies like Balls at Ramco will take the old equipment off the market and manage that responsibly. We have no such thing as waste from equipment anymore. Nothing goes to landfill. It's all a resource for the next generation of equipment. We want to get that turn going, because really we're only probably 3 kitchens away from 2050. And it's a bit like electric vehicles. We're probably only, all of us, 2 or 3 cars away from being all electric by 2050. So every day that we delay that move is a day lost to try and achieve that goal. And you really have to rack up what you do in the remaining time to claw back what you've lost. So a scrappage scheme will help do that. But what underpins all of that, and we've had a lot of work going on with BAYS and also their consultants at an energy technology list that encompasses all of the equipment in a commercial kitchen, so that from an operational point of view, if you want to put together an A-class energy efficient kitchen, you should be able to do that by having a group of products that you can pick from. At the moment, as you know, we only have it for professional refrigerated cabinets.
Yeah. Yeah, so Paul, coming back to you, Keith was mentioning their scrappage and catering equipment removal, and that's something that Ramco specialises in. So how do you feel that you could help on that side of things for the whole industry?
Well, as Keith mentioned, you know, market forces are in play, and new technology is a key driver for the change. So if we take you know, gas versus electric, you know, the amount of equipment that is gas driven, there's coming, so there's a home for it, and sustainability and environmental pressures. And so we hope, and it's the same for Keith with FEA, that this crisis that we have, you know, means that, that there is opportunity, you know, out of the adversity. So we want it to accelerate the increase of new, more efficient technology. But that still means that, because we sell equipment not just in the UK, not just for startups, but into mainland Europe and beyond, depending on the value of it. And so we see that that can only be a good thing out of the carnage, sadly, that we've got in hospitality. But yes, it's an opportunity that I think will keep us busy for the foreseeable.
Oh, surplus and second-hand equipment will be an area that is new to a lot of people, particularly if they haven't had any direct experience of it. How regulated is the industry?
A good question, Andrew. Well, we, because of our background dealing with the Ministry of Defence and our ISO standards, we are audited on a very frequent basis. So we've got 9,000, 14,000, 27,000, 40,000, you know. So as far as we're concerned, in terms of a compliant disposal route, obviously the WE directive, and I'm pleased, you know, to be able to say that for everything that we handle, because it's not just my responsibility in terms of catering equipment, but everything else that we handle, our latest statistics show that less than 0.1% of everything that we handle has gone to landfill. Yeah. So we'll parts harvest, we will, you know, we will strip down and do our best, you know, to keep it from a hole in the ground. And that, you know, that's a big driver for other people as well. So, you know, end of use in a particular environment doesn't necessarily mean end of life. So somebody else can have the opportunity to reuse a perfectly good piece of equipment.
Sure. I know over the past few years you've done a lot of work with some big chains in terms of helping them you know, move and utilize surplus equipment. Just from the manufacturer angle and the suppliers angle, is there a commercial opportunity there for manufacturers when it comes to second-hand equipment?
Yes, in fact, we have two ways of operating. Typically, we will buy equipment, but the preferred model is where we share the gain. So our involvement is either collection or delivery, but obviously the marketing and promotion of the equipment. And so that share gain is very transparent. It's itemized, and then the incentive is for us to maximize that sale value. So there is a well-known, I won't mention brand, but we bought some equipment pre-Christmas, but they're just trialling through our next dedicated auction a share gain scheme on on a variety of equipment. So yes, it is happening, and we provide that third party outlet where the branded OEM wants to concentrate on new sales, not B grade or obsolete.
Sure. Coming back to you, Keith, in terms of benefits for manufacturers, if there is a move more towards second-hand equipment, can you see it kind of maybe increasing service calls that they would have to deal with? Would they be able to benefit from opportunities on that side of things?
Oh, certainly. I think we're going to see significant change within the market as a result of all of this. There's no question about it. And probably the change that would have occurred over the next 5 or 10 years is going to happen over the next 5 or 6 months. It's going to consolidate a lot of the focus of what goes on. Now, what is interesting, we're well resourced in having a very effective and efficient supply chain for equipment. It's well structured, it's experienced, and the skill sets are there. It's how those skill sets get devolved that will be interesting. And I think one of the greatest opportunities that can come out of this is the focus on the role of equipment. And yes, we recognise that there are different circumstances that will suit different types of equipment. And maybe operators will look at a mix and match solution. I think they're going to be considering what they do. I think the role of leasing comes through. Certainly in terms of the greater use of second-hand equipment, that needs then a good supply of OEM parts to meet the needs of that equipment, to keep it up to the original manufacturer specification, and it needs a service agreement going alongside it. So I think we'll see some changes and rebalancing in the market as it looks to work with what the operator base needs. Very simply, I mean, heard this morning on the radio the prospect of 1 million in our industry, in the operator industry, losing their jobs as a result of this. Well, all of those people have got food service and hospitality as part of their passion. And many of those will see opportunities elsewhere to bring new solutions to the fore. And yes, we know a lot about takeaway delivery, dark kitchens, all of these scenarios of providing us with a hospitality experience, whether it's in the home or out of home. And they all need equipment of different sizes, shapes and types at different stages. So the fact that we've got a resource that can be used means that we can meet that need. But yes, I think you'll see some significant changes go on, not only nationally in our market and within the sectors that we know of in the UK, but internationally as well. I think there will be some consolidations and some changes that will be different than we might have expecting perhaps at the start of the year. Because we also have to respect the fact that the UK market was tightening anyway in January or February before this happened. Don't
underestimate the Brexit impact.
Yeah, indeed. So there are different challenges, and the full force of Brexit is yet to come through. So that again means manufacturers are looking at changing their offering and how they might adapt to the market needs and conditions.
Yeah, and a similar question back to you, Paul. What do you think are the main benefits and opportunities for manufacturers, for dealers, and for operators, so throughout the supply chain, for them using more second-hand equipment? What would you see the main opportunities for each party in the chain?
Well, it's interesting, Claire, because the other drivers that mean that we are a compliant outlet for the disposal. It isn't just about being more efficient and more productive with the space that you have. And clearly that repurposing is going on now in kitchens. I was reading an article in Facilitate, the FM magazine only last night, where a catering consultant was talking about that opportunity, which is now. And of course, as Keith has alluded to, the other market forces and our eating habits. I mean, it will be interesting for hospitality, particularly where the caution in terms of going out to enjoy that eating out experience, is tempered for the foreseeable months and well into next year. And so whether or not the equipment that's used to produce the food is going to be in a changing environment, or a need, in fact, for the distributor. And again, the consolidation. We're a very fragmented industry at distributor level, at operator level, and at OEM level, with a huge level of expertise. So and experience, which Keith has mentioned. So it is massive change, but there are opportunities, because the good thing is we all need to eat and drink responsibly, especially with tomorrow in mind. Yeah, the benefits for the OEM will be based on how many of them will be able to adapt quickly, go with good enough as well, within the guidelines that, of course, they're changing daily. And a plug for Keith. We are members of FEA, and there's been a terrific flow of information and guidelines that has meant that we as an industry are up to speed. The tricky bit is the crystal ball, but it's becoming clearer, and obviously this weekend and the next few weeks and each review period we'll see the next the next opportunity and easing, but it's with us for a while, and it's managing the change, and of course the regulations.
Okay, just one very final question for each of you to end on very quickly. Paul, you talked about auctions earlier, catering equipment auctions, without necessarily giving any brand names away. What kind of product really flies in a catering equipment auction?
Well, I could make a certain managing director of a warewashing company who are involved in waste happy, because I did tell him that in June the item that had the single biggest number of bids was one of his under-counter machines, but without wanting to exclude anybody, because whether you're making stuff up in Scotland or you're importing stuff from being manufactured overseas, I would liken it to the car market. And so if we've got a Mercedes or an Audi or a BMW, so the equivalent, and we know who those good, responsible brands are, they're always in high demand, but just think about what a kitchen needs. So it needs smart technology, whether it's using ovens or fryers, and of course refrigeration, and cleaning. So all of the above.
Perfect. Okay, and Keith, just to you, in a nutshell, you obviously described a lot of the forces that are at work at the moment, second-hand, new equipment. Moving forward, and given the economic environment that we're in, are you concerned that there won't be enough new product development and R&D happening moving forward?
Most definitely, and we need government to support the R&D. We've got to keep that going, not just for our industry, but across UK manufacturing as a whole and across our industry as a whole. And I think in terms of achieving that, this is where we've really got to unite, and we've seen great work going on between all industry organisations. I mean that across the operator industry and our supply chain as well. We've got to keep the pressure on government to keep sub-economic operator businesses going until we can trade out of this, until they can trade out of this. Because it's only when they start making a profit, have returned their loans, the loan value to zero, that they can start investing in the equipment. And we've got to see it that our industry in its breadth has been unique, and it was first in, it's going to be last out of this by the looks of things. And this is where I think our unity on all angles, and we've been successful in seeing UK Hospitality set up their supplier alliance, and we've been party to that. We're doing our own surveys. we've got to hold that together and push it forward for all the component parts, because without an operator industry, we haven't got a supply chain. And one final point to make, if I may, I know from colleague associations in the electrical industries, their members are seeing turnover drops of perhaps 15 or 20%. In our industries, we know from our research, it's 80 and 90%. Now, that's going to mean a lot of the knowledge and experience working on equipment, whether that's in manufacture or whether it's installation or whether it's service, those skills could easily hemorrhage out of our industry as those individuals look to find jobs elsewhere. And that would be tragic, because we know how challenging it is to train in this market. So yes, I think there are pressure points on all of the actors in the supply chain, but R&D and future innovation, which will be connectivity, energy efficiency, that's where the cuts will be, unfortunately, and that will hinder us from getting to those 2050 goals that we started talking about.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for this special session on second-hand equipment. I'm sure it's something that we will return to as we go forwards and the picture becomes clearer. But for this week's Market Talk, that's it.